What's up, internet? If you're new to the channel, awesome, so am I, because this is my first YouTube video. So thank you for hanging out with me. Let me introduce myself real quick, and then we're going to break down the minor pentatonic scale, and I'll show you how to play it in any key, anywhere on the fretboard. And if you stick around until the end of the video, I'm also going to show you a super easy trick to turn it from the minor pentatonic into the major pentatonic scale. So stay with me. What's up, internet? My name is Joseph Widner, and this is my channel, Widner Music. I'm a music educator. I've been teaching both guitar and bass for a few years now, and I'm also an attorney. I run a solo law practice where most of my clients are artists and musicians. So I deal with a lot of copyright issues, some trademark stuff, a little bit of contract law, and I help them set up the legal framework around their businesses. So the short version of my goal in starting up this channel is to combine those two things. I want to serve as a source of information, primarily for guitar and bass players, whether you're just starting out or you're a working musician. I plan on focusing pretty heavily on music theory, specifically as it applies to guitar and bass, looking at some instrument maintenance and setup tips, and maybe putting up a backing track or two once in a while. Just as importantly, though, and without giving anything that might be construed as specific legal advice, I want to cover some legal issues in broad strokes that I think bands and artists should have at least some general understanding of. That could be copyright basics. There are some trademark and business setup issues that I think is really beneficial for people to know pretty early on if they're thinking about starting a band or even putting out some solo music. And maybe I can cover some contract issues that I think you guys might run into when you're booking venues and things like that. So if any of that sounds like something you'd be interested in learning, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell or whatever, like this video, watch it first, of course, I guess. But probably most importantly, leave a comment for me. Let me know what music or music-related legal topics you guys are interested in learning about, and chances are I'll get to them as the channel goes forward. And any help I can get getting this thing off the ground would be appreciated, for real. I want to reach out and help as many of you guys as I can. But without getting any more carried away, today's topic is the minor pentatonic scale. This is a scale that a lot of you are probably somewhat familiar with. If you're not, absolutely don't worry about it. I'm going to cover everything that you need to know. But even if you are, I'm going to try to cover it in a way that maybe you haven't thought about it before, and I'm definitely going to try to cover it in a little bit more detail than maybe what you've thought about it in before, so that you can take it a little further in your playing. We're going to break it down into 5 easy to memorize shapes or boxes or positions, whatever you'd like to call them, and then I'm going to show you how they all fit together and repeat themselves so that you can really master the scale across the whole fretboard. There's a totally free PDF included in the video description below that has all this stuff laid out for you to reference. And don't forget, at the end of the video, I'm going to show you a simple trick to turn it from minor into major pentatonic. Now, the minor pentatonic scale is a super versatile scale for a whole lot of reasons. It works really well over rock and blues, but in a whole lot of other musical contexts as well. And once you're familiar with it, you're actually going to start seeing it all the time and stuff that you probably already play. In fact, there are a whole lot of famous guitar players out there that have relied on this scale really heavily throughout their careers. I'm talking about guys like Jimmy Page, David Gilmour, Eric Clapton. That's not at all to say that this is all that they use. Those guys have a pretty large music theory arsenal at their disposal, but you will definitely find the minor pentatonic scale featured really prominently in their playing. You can also use the scale as kind of a shorthand to play over any minor mode or major mode, really, if you know a trick or two. And if you don't know what modes are, again, absolutely no worries. They're just a special set of 7-note scales that I'm sure I'll end up doing multiple videos on down the road. And actually, the way that we're going to break down the pentatonic scale today is a great primer for one of the ways that I usually cover modes with my students. The modes can be pretty confusing sometimes, so I like to think about them in multiple ways. but this is going to be a great primer for the main way that I break them down on the fretboard. So I'm going to start with kind of a silly question, but what even is a scale? The way that I like to think about scales on the fretboard is as a cipher, or a way that we can kind of decode it. If you've ever seen in like a kid's movie or something, where they take a piece of paper and they cut a bunch of little holes out of it, and then you put that over a specific page of a specific book, and you can use it to send a secret message. Pretty much just like that, if we know which scale to use and our root note, we can know which notes are going to sound good in a specific context, and we can kind of impose that pattern over the fretboard to find those notes. Another way to think about it is that we have 12 notes to pick from in our musical alphabet. We have the letters A through G, which makes 7, and then 5 sharps and flats wedged in between them. So these 12 notes keep repeating, always in the same order, and that is our musical alphabet. A scale tells us which of those 12 notes are going to sound good in this specific musical context. So besides which scale to use, we also need one more piece of information, and that's what our root note is. That's where we anchor this pattern. So let's take our A string, for example, and A is going to be our root. So with that as our root, our minor pentatonic scale is A, that's our 1, or root. The second note on the scale is going to be a minor third, or a C. I'm not going to focus a whole lot on intervals or note names right now, because I don't think that it's imperative for you to be familiar with that right now, especially if these are new patterns to you, patterns that you're going to be seeing for the first time. The further on you get, I would suggest becoming familiar with intervals. Is going to make learning other scales a lot easier. But the free PDFs linked in the description are going to include versions of each pattern that we're going to talk about with and without intervals, in case you want to focus on those. So we have our A, our root, our C, our minor third. We have a perfect fourth, which is a D, a perfect fifth, which is an E here. We have a minor seventh, which is a G in this case. And then the octave of our 1, and we're back to our root, which is an A. Then that pattern just repeats itself over and over. So the pentatonic scale uses 5 notes out of the 12 notes in our musical alphabet, and those are the 5. Now, you'll notice that it takes a whole lot of wrist and forearm movement to play the scale horizontally across the fretboard like that, which isn't very conducive to guitar playing. That's why we usually learn our scales vertically, and if we play our A minor pentatonic vertically, it looks like this, the exact same notes that we just played. This is a shape that a lot of you are probably familiar with. This is the first position of our A minor pentatonic scale, and here we're playing it in 2 full octaves with our root note highlighted there in red. It's highlighted in red on the PDF too. But this isn't the only place on the fretboard that these 5 notes show up. If we plug these 5 notes in across the whole fretboard, it looks a little bit daunting when you think about memorizing that. And that's why we break it up into the 5 positions that we're going to talk about here today. It's going to make it way, way easier to memorize. Now, we've seen position 1 here. Moving from the low E string up, we have the 5th fret and then 8th fret on the low E, 5-7 on the A, 5-7 on the D, 5-7 on the G, 5-8 on the B, and 5-8 on the high E. We also want to be super cognizant of where our root notes are in these patterns. So right now, our root notes are on the 5th fret of the E string, because we're playing an A minor pentatonic scale, the 7th fret of the D string, and again on the 5th fret of the high E string. Okay, that's going to be super important to think about and remember as we go forward. If you're not familiar with this pattern, this would probably be the first one that I really spent time with and memorized. A lot of players spend a lot of time in this box right here in their playing, and that's perfectly fine. Even if you're not familiar with that pattern, the sound is probably pretty familiar too. So, like I said, it gets used a whole lot in rock and blues and other contexts. Super, super popular. Even if your fingers don't recognize it, your ear probably does. If you want to expand that a little bit, keep moving with me through each of these positions and then go back and memorize them one at a time using either this video or the PDFs or both, whatever works best for you. So now here is box 2. We're going to call it box 2 because it's the box right ahead of box 1, but the first note that we play in this box, moving from low note to high note, the first note that we're going to play is actually the second note of the scale. It's not our root note. So moving from the low E string up here, we have frets 8 and 10, 7, 10 on the A, 7, 10 on the D, 7, 9 on the G, 8, 10 on the B, and 8, 10 on the high E. That's box 2 of the minor pentatonic. And again, you can see our root notes highlighted there in red. Here, our root notes are on the 7th fret of the D string and the 10th fret of the B string. So all the notes that we're playing in these positions are going to be relative to that. That's what our ear is going to be drawn to. Okay, that's our root here. Now box 3, we go 10, 12 on the E, 10, 12 on the A, 10, 12 on the D, 9, 12, 10, 13, 10, 12. Okay, our root notes here are going to be on the 12th fret of the A string and the 10th fret of the B string again. Okay, that's box 3. We'll go to box 4. We have 12, 15, 12, 15, 12, 14, 12, 14, 13, 15, 12, 15. Again, root notes on the 12th of the A, 14th of the G. You can see the same 1 octave pattern that we saw in position 1 really clearly between our root notes here. So we have this 1 octave pattern here, starting on the A string, and this same 1 octave pattern here, starting on the E string. Okay, so that's kind of how I remember that. Last but not least, we're going to look at box 5. That's going to be 15, 17, 15, 17, 14, 17, 14, 17, 15, 17, 15, 17. Again, we want to be super cognizant of where our root notes are in these positions. Once you get that pattern memorized, go back and know where your root notes are. So here we have the 17th fret of the low E string, and then the 14th fret of our G string, and then the 17th fret of our high E. I tend to think of box 5 as the Dorian box because it's got a shape that's very similar to the Dorian mode, the first position of the Dorian mode. If that helps you remember this, use it. If it doesn't, or if it confuses you, absolutely forget about that. It's not important. It's just a way that helps me remember that shape. But where do we go after box 5? We go back to box 1, and the pattern just repeats. So after we're here in box 5 on the 15th and 17th, we're back to our root note on the 17th, and then just box 1 starts over there. Okay, so we can also go back down to the other end of the fretboard because remember, this just repeats every 12 frets. So when we have box 4 on the 12th fret here, we just bring that down 12 frets, and then we're in our open strings, and we can see box 4 repeated here. Cognizant of the root notes. Then box 5 is repeated after that, starting on the 3rd fret here, And then we're back with where we started in box 1, and that's how the pattern fits together. Okay, so spend some time memorizing each of these 5 patterns individually. It's going to take some time. Get comfortable going forwards. Get comfortable going backwards. And be cognizant of where your root notes are in each pattern. That's going to be super important, okay? Then, after you're comfortable with each of these 5 patterns, spend some time memorizing how the patterns fit together, and spend some time playing between patterns. Start a riff in one box and in another box, that kind of thing. It's going to take a little time, but if you keep at it, you will get it under your fingers, I promise, and you will be able to play the minor pentatonic scale in any key, anywhere on the fretboard. The only other thing I would really add at this point is think about playing over a drone, or one long note that just repeats. You can find that on YouTube, or if you have a keyboard or something, just get one note that is just gonna ring out, okay? And make it your root note. So if you're gonna stick to the A minor pentatonic, make it an A note drone, so that you hear all of the notes that you're playing relative to that root note. That's really going to help your ear develop also, in addition to your fingers. So after that, maybe throw up an A minor pentatonic backing track and have some fun with it. Remember that this is a movable scale, so if you want to play in a different key, all you have to do is take this master pattern that we've learned for our A minor pentatonic scale, and you have to know what root note your new root note is, and you can move this pattern, this master pattern, up or down the fretboard, and then use the exact same pattern from there. So, for example, if I wanted to play a G minor pentatonic scale over something, I would just take this master pattern, and I would move our root note from A down to G, and then my position 1 becomes 3, 6, 3, 5, 3, 5, 3, 5, 3, 6, 3, 6, 3. There's my new root note, okay? Or B, I would slide it up 2 frets from the A. And that whole master pattern of all 5 of those shapes just slides up or down. Going back to the piece of paper with the holes cut out that we talked about earlier. And we just move that according to where our root note is. Now, as promised, I'm also going to show you a trick that you can use to very easily go from playing in a minor pentatonic scale to a major pentatonic scale, okay? And what we do there, we use the exact same patterns, the exact same 5 patterns, the exact same master pattern, but our root note changes. So if we leave our root note, if we leave our pattern exactly where it is, with our minor root note over the 5th fret of the E string, so that we're playing in an E minor pentatonic, if our root note, without moving the pattern, if we change our root note to a C, we're now playing in a C major pentatonic, okay? Because it's not the pattern that makes it major or minor necessarily. It's where your root note is. And what's going to help determine that is what you're playing over. So the chord progression that you're playing over, or the bass line that you're playing over, that's going to resolve to a specific note. If it resolves to an A while you're playing this specific pattern and this portion of the fretboard, then it's going to sound like an A minor pentatonic. If it resolves to a C, then it's going to sound like a C major pentatonic. Okay? Now let's say that it resolves to another note. Let's say that it resolves to a G, and you want to play in G major pentatonic. Well, then position 2 of your minor pentatonic is going to need to line up so that it is starting on the G. For example, another way to think about that is that position 2 of the minor pentatonic is position 1 of the major pentatonic. Position 1 of the minor pentatonic is position 5 of the major pentatonic. Okay? So instead of having to relearn, 5 shapes, you already know the 5 shapes. With making that one switch of where your root note is, you can change it from minor to major and vice versa. Okay, that's why this whole time I've been harping on knowing where your root notes are. Okay, because that's where you're going to resolve, that's where your ear is trained to go and put all the other notes in relation to that. I said I wasn't going to talk about intervals, and I really haven't. If you want to look at the PDFs, when we switch from our minor to a major, in our minor we have a minor third, 4/5, minor 7, 1. When our root note switches and we use the same notes, instead of that we have a 1, a second, major third, perfect 5th, 6th, and then a 1. So the intervals are different. That's why it's changing, because our ear is hearing those notes in relation to a different note, and they have a different relationship to that note. So that's the easiest way that I've found to play the minor pentatonic over the entire fretboard in a key. It's the easiest way that I've found to switch between the major and minor pentatonics. I hope that was helpful. If it was, again, please subscribe to the channel. Help me get this off the ground. Help me further this information to other people. Give the video a like. Hit the notification bell, because I will be putting up more stuff. But again, mainly leave me a comment. Let me know what you liked about this video. Let me know if it was helpful. Let me know if it wasn't. But then let me know what music or music related topics that you would like me to cover, and I am sure that I will have another video up soon. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. Peace.